Hello and welcome. I am Raziel, and see, I like to talk about different games. I like to talk about other games. I like to talk about Mantic. I like to talk about Conquest. I love talking about Wild West Exodus. It's just the best game you can play right now. And as a skirmish game, it's fantastic. And you can play even slightly larger battles if you have the models to go with it. Anyway, some of the things I usually hear back in my comment section, and even though I'm quite new, and don't have that bigger population or fan base, I actually do see quite a few common arguments against choosing a different game. Now, one of these reasons I think is quite preposterous, to be honest with you, and I think it's a little bit weird that it's constantly brought up. The other one kind of makes sense, but I'll get to that one in a minute. Now, the more people who play different games, the wargaming industry is going to grow with it, but it's going to grow more naturally, where companies are going to compete with each other for for players, and we are seeing this now with Warlord and Bolt Action, and we're seeing this with War Cradle and Kings of War and Mantic, like I said, and Power Bottom Games. They are competing with each other, even though they have very different games. We do want to attract other people. And some do it via price, which is Kings of War. Mantic, they do it because they are one of the cheapest. Warlord is for historical gaming, well, with a mixed with that action-paced gameplay, which is in most other sci-fi fiction, about action. And War Cradle tends to stick to the smaller scales, even though Wild West Exodus still remains one of the best games ever made. And I will die on that hill. It's absolutely fantastic. But War Cradle tends to make the best looking models out of all of them. And so they are competing. They have their own little, unique selling points, their own USPs, and they do it well. Conquest happens to be larger models. See what I mean? But when it comes to different arguments about whether or not to play a different game, the first argument I tend to hear a lot is, oh, we have to learn new rules and new lore. Well, you don't have to learn new lore to play the game. It's fun, it's interesting, it's enjoyable, but it's not actually a necessity to play the game. But most of these games actually have the lore for free, and you can just read it. And some have books which you can read, and most of them are pretty good. I do like the Mantic books. I really like Lazarus for Wild West Exodus, and I want a Dystopian Wars book. That would be fantastic. And yes, you do have new lore, but you don't have to. And if that's a problem with you, I think that's not a problem with getting into a new game. That's more of a you thing, but you're so tied to a particular setting that you can't read anything outside of it. It sounds weird to me that picking up a different book that is not Warhammer related is such an issue for you that you can't play a different game. Right? I don't understand that. I read a lot, and I have science fiction, I have fantasy, I have westerns, I have textbooks, I have a whole range of books. And it's weird to me that having to read something new is a reason you won't play another game. Is kind of strange, seeing as it feels like, in my opinion, that you're only stuck reading a certain setting, and that's it. You won't go outside of that, and it just feels strange. But yeah, anyway, but learning new rules, that's not even an argument anymore. It's a strange thing to say. Oh, I'm going to have to learn new rules. I got to play this new game. Well, if you're doing Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar, you are going to be learning new rules pretty much every 4 to 5 years anyway, let alone the constant rules updates, which you're going to have to learn as well, and everything else that goes with it. So you can either try a new game which is going to have a set of rules which is pretty much going to be standard throughout its edition. I see very little change in Kings of War. I see very little change in Conquest. There aren't massive changes in these games from the start of the edition to the end of the edition. They tend to maintain solidarity throughout. Where with Warhammer 40k, or Age of Sigmar 40k, you're constantly getting FAQs, you're constantly getting erratas. You get every time a new codex drops, the rules get some sort of change. So saying you can't, it's hard to get into a new game because you got to learn new rules, and you're only playing Games Workshop products seems like a silly argument to make if you're constantly having to learn new rules throughout the lifetime of the edition, right? Whereas all these other games tend to be, like I said, tend to be quite solid in their rule set. They kind of be quite robust, and you can play it, and you don't have to constantly download something new just because it's new. There's new rules or a new codex dropped. So yeah, the whole having to learn new rules seems just like a daft thing to me. The second one is, it's people. I can't find people. It's hard to find people to play. That is very true. That is incredibly true, and I do think this is more to do with the brand popularity of Games Workshop and the availability of Warhammer miniatures. An example of this is I have 2 model shops in my town. I don't live in a big town. I live out in the country. I have 2 model shops, and I can't get Mantic. I can't get War Cradle there. I can't get other games which are not Games Workshop from either shop. I can buy model planes, like Airfix or Tamiya or anything like that. But other war games, on the other hand, is a lot more difficult to buy. For me to go into buying anything else, I have to travel at least 45 minutes on a train, because that's how far away from any decent city I live, to get there, right? But if you live in a big city, it's a lot easier. I mean, if you live in Bristol, you have Excelsior, and there's another model shop which also sells other models which are outside Games Workshop. So it does look like these companies are growing into the high street, which is a great idea, and it should be something that should be supported. But it is still a lot easier to play and get Warhammer models. But that doesn't make the excuse for one-page rules, or actually even some Mantic games. You can easily use certain models from your Games Workshop models into Mantic. You can, I would say, at a push, you can disagree with me if you want. You use Space Marines as Enforcers, or you can use Dwarves as Dwarves from Games Workshop to Kings of War to try it out. So you could still try the new games, but use your old models, and then sort of get into the actual models of the hobby of a new game you want to play, and then continue. But as for trying getting new people, this of course is an issue, and most local game clubs tend to play Warhammer, and but you can just say, and this is something you can do, and just say, look, I want to try this new game. I have 2 armies. I would like to play Kings of War. I have 2 armies. I want to play it. Will anyone join me? And I would say you'd probably get a yes. I would say it would be very hard for you to get a no, but it's really, you usually get a yes, because people want to try something new every so often. That's why card games are so popular, because it's easy to try something new, and that's all you need to do is say, look, I've got 2 armies, they're 2 small armies, I bought the starter set, does anyone want to play with me? And like I said, you probably get a yes, and good for you. But it does take you personally that sort of extra step that you would have to take with Games Workshop, and I understand this. But it's going to be worth it in the long run, because you get to play a better game. You get to have a little bit more fun. I was just reading the new thing about Horus Heresy. 4 turns. That's because the game is stupidly long per turn. And having to go down to 4 turns from 6 just shows that the game's going to finish halfway through half the time. And it's just going to be a way of saying, we've made it quicker, but you've not really improved the speed. You've just, half the time. Anyway, that's just what I want to say. So basically, those are the 2 arguments I tend to hear more about why you can't do new games, why it's so difficult. And honestly, I think the first one, having to learn new rules, if you're a Warhammer player, it seems to be a bit of a false rule, a false standard. It's like, you have to learn new rules, but you're constantly having to learn new rules anyway. And the other one does take a little bit more effort on your side. And I'm not someone who doesn't do what they say. Like, I do this, and when I get the chance to go to my game club, I will say, if I get the free time, it's like, look, I want to play blah blah blah. Does anyone want to join me? And I'll be happy with that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a great day. I'll see you all soon. And I hope you have a lovely day. If you wish to save money on your wargaming, as always, there's Whaling Games down below. Up to 20% off and free delivery after £20. They have a whole wide range of games there, including Conquest, Wild West Exodus, and Kings of War. It's where I buy my models from. There's also Forbidden Planet for comics, DVDs, mangas, and graphic novels, all that cool stuff. There's my merchandise. If you want to see Little Red Riding Hood, go absolute ham on some cyborg like Lovecraftian werewolves. Go down there. If you really, that's a nice personal support if you want to. And there's Skyforge, good friend of mine. I do not get paid by him. He's a friend of mine. I just want to support his. I just want to support him as much as I can. So give him a click. And finally, Patreon because business. Bye bye.